live a life that magnifies the Lord? How do we become a vessel to be used for His glory? The other thing is really how do we deal with the battles, the storms that come in, the trials, the challenges that we face, and really above all else, how do we live a life and how do we just embrace God? How do we become overwhelmed by all that God is? All those require discipline for us to be focused and to be hardworking in our lives. The other thing too that we'll see kind of throughout the next couple of weeks is 2 Timothy is all about discipleship. It's strong on discipleship. That's kind of the huge theme of 2 Timothy. So as you dive in, just kind of think about, what is Paul trying to tell Timothy in that? And so, I don't know if you guys have read that little Charles Spurgeon quote that I had shown you guys, but I think it resonates with a lot of us, is that, we don't want to just be an ordinary soldier. We want to be a good soldier. We want to be an elite soldier. And so we have that, we talk about, burning that, just having that fire within our hearts. How do we do that? We all desire to have that passion for God. We want to be the bravest among brave, zealous, passionate, courageous, and to be used by God. How do we do that? It's going to require that discipline. How do we apply that? The problem, though, comes in a couple things that I looked at this week, and I think we all can resonate with this. And throughout the night, just think about these things. If Christ is not our complete satisfaction, the enemy's going to draw us away. I mean, if we're not completely satisfied in Him, we're going to be just sucked away by our desires. Our hearts are desire factories. And think about that. I mean, we're always desiring something. And I can tell you it's not always God. We all know that. We do not naturally find delight in God. We wake up in the morning and those embers of salvation are just sitting there. Are we going to stoke the fire? Or are we just going to, I'm busy. I've got Facebook to look at. I've got kids are screaming. I'm running out the door. And so that's key right there is, we are desire factors. And it doesn't naturally, it's not naturally gravitating towards God. We've got to discipline ourselves to that. If you have no strategy and discipline, you're going to be swept away. We've got to have a discipline and strategy to do that. And so it comes down to the bottom line is, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And not that a newsflash, but we live in a world of war where the enemy's always attacking us. Yes, we're saved, but the devil's intent is to keep us bound and gagged in passivity. That's his focus, okay? I can't drag your soul to hell, but I'm going to keep you so passive, so complacent in life, so caught up in your own desires that you're not even going to be useful for God. And so how do we get to that point? I can tell you last week, just talking about, I want to be overwhelmed, I deal with complacency or anger. You know what, I wasn't excited for God and just so joyful after. It seemed like hell's fury got thrown at me right after that. And that's the thing, is as we move towards what we want to do, Satan's going to throw hell's fury at us. And that's what I realized, that what I was not doing is I wasn't looking at joy and just having that joy and satisfaction in God. I wasn't looking at it as a battle against the flesh and against Satan. And that was my problem. And kind of halfway through the week, I was like, I'm tired. This is just, my wife again, she's like, why are you so angry? And I'm like, I'm not. And I was just like, man, I'm tired of this. And I was listening to some hyper stuff, and it was talking about that satisfaction and our desire factories. And that was it. It was like, I've got to see that this is a battle. This is something that I have to actually fight for. And so, again, this is where discipleship and accountability and mentoring are so important. When we talk about Corinthians, be watchful, stand firm, act like men, and be strong. How? We've got to be trained to do that. Paul is talking to Timothy. Hey, Timothy, man up. Be strong and have good courage right now. Don't be afraid anymore. There's a battle that's coming. So again, what does that look like? We talk about discipleship. Phil has been talking about it. And so in a war setting, what does discipleship look like? That's what we're in. We're in a war. How does that look like? Because what discipleship is not, it's not lording something over you. It's not having the discipler or lording over the disciplee. It's, me pouring into someone, and I need him and to be strong so that he can have my back. It's not lording over anything. It's I need him for the battle. And so here's a story, and some of you Army men may have heard the story before, but on June 7th, 1944, Major General Norman Dutch the deputy commander of the 29th Infantry Division came across a group of infantrymen pinned down by German soldiers who had occupied a French farmhouse. General Cota turned to the captain in command and asked why his men were making no efforts to take the house. The young captain's reply was, "Sir, the Germans are in there, and they're shooting at us." "I'll tell you what, Captain," he said as he unbuckled 2 grenades from his jacket. "You and your men start shooting at them. I'll take a squad of men around, and the rest of you men watch carefully. That's the training part. I'll show you how to take a house with the Germans in it." Following the general's orders, they began to fire at the farmhouse. Cota let them squat around ahead to get close as possible to the house. Suddenly, he let out a loud roar, "Rock, Kushak!" As they raced towards them, grenades tossing, Cota and another man kicked in the front door, tossed a couple more grenades, waited for the explosions, and dashed in the house. The surviving Germans still outside were streaming out the back door, running for their lives. Cota calmly walked back to where the captain was, just trying to catch his breath. "Now you've seen how to take a house. Do you understand? Do you know how to do it? Now do it." That's what discipleship looks like in a battle setting. That general still needed his men to fight. He needed to have his back. So he went into the training park and trained them how to do that. And again, that's where Paul is telling Timothy, there's a storm coming. I'm not going to be with you anymore. I'm going to die soon. But you are a vessel. I've been pouring into you. It's time to man up. It's time to fight. And so that's where we're at right now. And so as we come here tonight, we're looking to be, how do we be trained? We don't want to be ordinary soldiers. We want to be good soldiers. We want to be elite soldiers. What does that look like? How do we do that? We can say we need to be disciplined, men and courageous. How do we apply that? And so, if you think about it, all in 2 Timothy 3, where it talks about, be disciplined like a soldier, or focus like a soldier, disciplined like an athlete, and hardworking like a farmer. When I was thinking about that, it's wrapped up into an elite soldier. That's what it is. And so, no one can just, sew on a Ranger tab or Special Forces tab and call them, elite. They actually have to go through the training and the discipline to be able to be used by their commander. It's the same way as Christians, as men. We've got to be trained so that we can be a useful vessel. What does that look like? What does the training look like? There's 2 men tonight that are going to share their experience of going through that physical training, being disciplined, hardworking, focused, in the elite training they had to go through, and how that really applies to their lives and being a Christian man. So, Phil, you want to come up and share?
All right, guys. Hey, I'm just going to take a minute of your time. Jim asked me to come up and just share briefly kind of my take on what it means to be a good soldier of Jesus Christ, kind of in a military way. And of course, when it comes to military service, all we can do is speak from our own experience. And so for me, my experience was that I joined the Marines right out of high school and did that for 4 years. And then I was out for a little while. Then I came back in the military as a chaplain with the Army, and spent the majority of my time with the Army Rangers in Fort Benning as well as Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And so that's my experience, but I can tell you that coming from that experience, the one word that resonates with me when I'm trying to draw an analogy between my experience and, say, being a disciple and a good soldier of Jesus Christ is the word identity. All right, so when it comes to identity, the best soldiers, the best sailors, airmen, and Marines always have a cultivated identity in terms of who they are in relation to what they're doing in the military. For example, in the Marines, Marines are not known for their humility. All right, Marines are generally not known for their quiet spirit. And the watchword when I was in the Marine Corps was, you're either a Marine or you suck. Right? That was just it. You're either in the Marines or you suck. All right? Kind of that swagger, right? Well, that was grounded in identity. And the way my drill instructor told me, a little place called Parris Island, South Carolina, he said, check it out. He said, if you're in the Army, you're a soldier. If you're in the Air Force, you're an airman. If you're in the Navy, you're a sailor. But if you're in the Marines, you are a Marine. That's the bottom line. And basically, we were supposed to constantly go back to that identity whenever we were facing hardships. And even after I got out of the Marines and I was in college and seminary, and I felt like just kind of kicking back and letting myself go and everything. I was like, wait a minute, I'm a Marine. I can't allow that to happen, right? It was that identity piece. Then I came into the Army, and God allowed me to go with these guys called the Rangers. And I found out that identity was very, very similar in the Rangers. Again, you look at the broader Army, and Rangers say, well, they are soldiers, right? Or this is what they do, but this is who we are. we're Rangers. In fact, Rangers have what's called the Ranger Creed. And some of y'all might have heard this before. It's basically 6 paragraphs. It's like an acrostic. So each paragraph starts with a separate letter that spells Ranger. So like the first stanza of the Ranger Creed, and every Ranger has to have this memorized. I mean, if you can't rattle this off in your sleep, you're going to be doing push-ups from now until when Jesus comes back. I mean, and you're not going to get to eat or anything. So you got to get this right. So the first stanza of the Ranger Creed goes like this. Recognizing that I volunteer as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession, I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high esprit de corps of my Ranger regiment. All right? And then the next one, acknowledging the fact that a Ranger is a more elite soldier, all the way down the line. So even going back to that in terms of your creed and that basic kind of document, that basic expression of who you are, that's what helps you in the time of battle. So for example, just case in point, 30 years ago actually, this past December, when the Rangers and the 82nd Airborne Division parachuted into Panama and captured Manuel Noriega and all that other stuff, when the Rangers were flying in, and they were in these big airplanes, all suited up with 100 pounds of kit on them, weapons, grenades, ammunition, the works, and they're hooked up inside the airplane. In other words, their static lines for their parachutes are hooked up to the anchor line cable, and the door of the plane is open. I mean, they are waiting to jump. They're about 2 minutes away from jumping into the darkness at 2 o'clock in the morning. God knows what's going to happen to them. Some of them did get killed, and they started reciting the Ranger Creed in the airplane. Just one of the guys just started sounding it off, and the Rangers just instinctively sounded off with the Ranger Creed. Now, what does that have to do with being a good soldier of Jesus Christ? I'll tell you what it has to do with being a good soldier of Jesus Christ. It all goes back to your identity. All right? Isn't that what we've been saying in Colossians for the last couple weeks? Right? Your entire life in Jesus goes back to who you are in Jesus Christ. Right? Colossians 3 verse 1. You have been raised with Christ. You are seated with Him in heavenly places. Ephesians 2 verse 6. It goes back to who you are as a born-again child of God. All right, now, going back to the identity piece in the physical world, even after I left the Army, right, because I'm now retired, I'm just a civilian like everybody else. But this morning, I was out running, right, and because I don't want to start looking like the average Baptist pastor, if you know what I mean. I'm going to buffet my body and all right. But I was out running this morning in my neighborhood. And I told myself, I was like, I'm going to run 3 laps. 3 laps on the neighborhood, then I'm going to go in the garage and work out, and then I'm going to get ready for work. After I was coming up to the end of 2 laps, I was like, you know what? I think I'll just stop at 2. And something inside of me said, wait a minute, aren't you a Ranger? I mean, come on now. Don't you want to, basically meet the standard here? I was like, okay, you got me. And I knocked out another lap, okay? I'll tell you, there's so many times in my life of following Jesus where the Holy Spirit has reminded me of who I am. That I'm a blood-bought follower of Jesus Christ. And sometimes the flesh wants me to do this. Sometimes the world wants me to do this. Sometimes the devil wants me to do this. And all I can say is, check it out, world, flesh, and devil. I am a blood-bought follower of Jesus Christ. That's not what I do. All right? Sometimes that's all you got. And so I would just simply tell you again, as Jim was asking me to share with you and talking about what it means to be a good soldier of Jesus Christ and enduring hardships, and there will be hardships. I mean, we are fighting battles. Battles, spiritual battles, right? When you are in a spiritual battle, just like Rangers, just like Marines, sometimes all you can do is remind yourself who you are and just plow on for Jesus, all right? That's it. God bless you guys. I'm off to my next event.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you. So, again, I mean, having our identity in Christ, I mean, that's key, is knowing who I am. Because as you go into battle, this is my identity. I'm a child of the living God. I love that. Who the singer is, but he goes on to basically, saying who he is, and then that's key as we, have to go through the disciplines of this is what I'm going through. I'm a child of God, pressing through on this. And so, I mean, that's key, and that was awesome what Phil shared. Mark, you want to come up and share your art?
Thanks, Jim. So, like Phil, I spent some time, not in the Marines, but in the Army. People ask me what you do. Build stuff and glue stuff up for actually the guys that I led did that stuff. I blew up a few things. But anyways, good times. But I'm not going to tell a bunch of war stories. Jim said, hey, we're going to be talking on discipline. So what does that look like in the military? Or what were your experiences with that? So, for me, as I was thinking about it, preparing for this, how did discipline work in the military for me? A lot of it was about community, because good community supports and fosters discipline. And this is how it worked for me in the military. Physical fitness, for example, that's a value of the military, right? And so 5 days a week, 6 a.m., guys line up in formation, and there's a roll call. If you're not there, 100 plus of your buddies know that you're not there. You're not showing up for PT that morning. Because when your platoon sergeant reports in to the first sergeant, all present, or so-and-so's a sick call, so-and-so's unaccounted for, everybody knows that you're not there. And that's a high level of accountability, right? So that, for me, as I was thinking about this, that made physical fitness and getting up, for me, it was actually getting up at 4 a.m. because I had an hour drive to be there in formation by 6 a.m. That wasn't fun. I had a daughter that had just been born, so we weren't getting much sleep in my house. And if it had been left up to me, when 4 a.m. came, I would have hit the snooze and gone back to bed. But I knew that there was going to be a formation, somebody was going to be calling for Lieutenant Kramer, and if I didn't sound off, then everybody's going to know I wasn't there. Not to mention there'd be consequences for that as well. So high level accountability in that community made it a lot easier for me to do what needed to be done, okay? And how does that translate over to Christian community? Same thing. I mean, that's why you guys are here. You guys have got that here, I think, from what I've observed. You may not have that in all the communities that you're in, but if you're in community, it's going to support and foster what the community values. I think it's important that we're in biblical community, and what I mean by that is biblical community is a community that values Jesus, who he is, what he values, tries to look more like Jesus, right? That's the kind of community that we need to be in if we're going to be good soldiers. If we're just in a community where we just hang out and we enjoy being around each other, then we're not going to have that level of accountability to be more like Jesus, to think more like Jesus, to value the things that Jesus values. When I think about how that works for me, the verse that comes to mind is Hebrews 10:24, where it talks about not forsaking gathering together, but doing that so that you can spur one another on towards love and good deeds. That's what your biblical community should be about. That should be the goal of why we get together with each other, so that we can spur one another on towards love and good deeds. And how does that practically work out and look like in my life? Well, one thing in our life group, and we recently started doing this, 4 or 5, maybe 6 months ago, but every time, or generally every time we get together, we have what are called gospel conversations, where we talk about what kind of gospel conversations we had the week before. And that's a level of accountability for what we value. We value gospel conversations. And there's a certain discipline that is required to have gospel conversations, right? You can walk by somebody or have a conversation with somebody and never bring up the gospel. It's pretty easy to do. I've done it for lots of years. But like I said, about 6 months ago, after getting back from the Amazon trip, we were doing that every day, weren't we, Butch? Because that was what was expected, right? There's a little expectation and some accountability, because when we came back at night, we reported on what we did. Well, when I came back, I was like, well, why do I have to go halfway across the world to do that? Why can't I just start doing it now? So I started doing that personally, and then we started doing it in our life group. And trust me, there are times that, there's an opportunity, easy opportunity to transition the gospel, and I think, I don't want to go there. The person, might get offended, or, just kind of say no in my face, or look at me like I'm weird. But then I remember, Thursday night, it'll be a life group, and we're going to be going, so tell me about your gospel conversations, and, I may be sitting there with crickets going, it's my turn, because I didn't have anything to share. And certainly that's not the root motivation of why I do it, but it certainly helps. Having that community and that expectation and that accountability helps me do the things that I need to do. Same thing with, reading the Word or prayer. That level of accountability helps me have discipline, just like it did in the Army. Because trust me, I'm probably like most everybody else in this room, getting up at 4 a.m. to go beat your body down with some physical fitness isn't the first thing on my list that I really want to go and do. But because that's what was valued, that's what was expected, that's what I was held accountable to, it made it much easier for me to be disciplined in doing that. So I think it's the same thing in the Christian life. We got to know what we value. We got to have some accountability around that and some community, and then the discipline becomes much easier. But at the end of the day, the discipline isn't just about us, because where does self-control or discipline really come from? Anyway. Galatians 5:23. It's the second verse after the beginning of the fruits of the Spirit, right? Self-control. Same thing, discipline. It comes ultimately from the Holy Spirit. God works that miracle in us, and then we act on that miracle in faith. Okay? So it's not just about us pulling up our bootstraps and saying, I'm going to grunt this out and do this, right? It's really going back and realizing that God's the one that works that self-control in me. And then he gives me community. I mean, that's a big part of what the church is about. Gives me community to help me have that accountability so that I can have that self-control and be disciplined. So it's not just about us grunting it out and toughing out. It's really going back and humbling ourselves before Jesus and realizing that I can't do this self-control, this discipline thing on my own. And quite honestly, God won't allow you to be very successful in that. You know, you may think you're going to get it done all by yourself, and then you're going to trip and fall and go, oh, I need you, which is exactly where he wants us to be and where we need to be. So don't forget that. Certainly community and doing your part to be disciplined is part of it, but ultimately that discipline comes from God as a fruit of the Spirit. So that's it. Jim?
All right, so kind of the last few minutes of kind of what I was going to share, and kind of coincides with just what Phil and what Mark had said, is, you know, one, first, our identity has to be in Christ. You know, we can't be disciplined if we don't know who we are and what we're being disciplined for. The other part is the community aspect, and just talking about discipleship and how we need each other to spur each other on is key in doing that. And so this last part that I talk about, I'm going to talk about discipline, but I want to focus first on, I think it was 2 Timothy 2, I think it's verse 1 and verse 2, but be strong in grace in Jesus Christ. That's the thing. Being disciplined, we've got to be strong in grace in Christ. And that's where it comes from. Otherwise, we're futile. We have no purpose of being disciplined. So it's having our identity in Christ, and we're strong in grace. And so when we think about discipline, it doesn't come naturally. We all know that. I mean, for me, I've got a mental disorder, but I like to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. 2:55, I set my clock for. 3 o'clock, I'm out of bed, cup of coffee, quiet time. Hopefully the kids aren't up. And after my quiet time, I go in my garage and work out. I like to do it, but first I had to be disciplined to do it, and now I do it naturally. And so that's the thing, is that if you start training yourself, things become second nature. Yes, I know I'm crazy. Okay. Yeah, 7:30. Some of the guys know I get to bed early, super early. My wife's like, "Come on, wake up! It's only 6:30." I'm like, "I know, it's bedtime." But it becomes naturally. But once I discipline to it. But you look at Facebook and how many we get our read on Sunday mornings. I get my read. You've been on Facebook for 5 hours. I didn't have to discipline myself to do Facebook. I don't have to discipline myself, for feeding the flesh desires. I have to be disciplined fighting against that. And so we can't look at discipline as legalistic. Discipline doesn't come naturally, but our life is dependent on it. So when Paul talks about, I discipline my body in such a way so I won't be disqualified. 1 Corinthians 9:25. That's key, because we don't want to be disqualified from the race we're on. We don't want to be that complacent, passive person that Satan's keeping bound up on the couch. We want to be intentional. So discipline is not legalism. It is the only way to true freedom. Someone who's disciplined himself to play the piano or get up at 3 o'clock in the morning is free to do things I'm restricted of doing. Paul talks about enjoying God, then talks about discipline. They go hand in hand. The disciplined Christian enjoys God in ways the undisciplined person can't. The thing is, it's not a spiritual gift. You actually have to train yourself in that disciplined part. And so that's the thing, is that the disciplined person enjoys things more. I can enjoy God more being disciplined in the Word when trials come my way. The other part is Paul charges again, as we go through the training, you've got to be disciplined. You've got to be that useful vessel. In identity in Christ, being disciplined, having that community is all key to being focused like a soldier, hardworking like a farmer, and disciplined like a man. And so that's what this all is about as we pour into each other. That's what the theme is. But the thing is knowing that, like Phil said, we are at war, and we've got to realize that. And then towards the end tonight, I'm going to kind of go over some other stuff on just kind of the battle. The one thing I've had a hard time doing is I've been trying to find songs that are just kind of tuned toward that war mentality. I can't find any. It's kind of odd. When you look at the Onward Christian Soldier, it's almost like one of the few songs. There's some heavy metal. Petra, if any of you guys know Petra songs, but it's interesting that the whole war theme and just that whole mentality isn't really there, but it's in the Bible, and Paul talks about that, putting on the full armor. And so when it comes down to it, is that disciplined approach that we have to have. And as we go into our table time, there's some questions just talking about discipline. How can each other help each other out being more disciplined in the areas that you're reading, whether it's reading the Word or praying. But with the sole purpose of 2 Timothy 2:11 through 13, and it's a trustworthy statement, and Paul says that if we die with him, we'll also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will deny us. If we're faithless, he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself. That's who God is. He is faithful even though when we're faithless. If we endure, though, we stay disciplined, we will reign with him. So that's what I challenge you guys this night is your small group tables, and this is what I encourage from here on out is stay with the tables, get to know your guys, share your numbers. These are your battle buddies. As we go through the different books of Paul, as we see challenges, how do we do this? How do we spur each other on? The guys around your table are the ones that help you spur each other on. So let me pray, and we'll just go into our table time. Father, we just come before you. We thank you for just the word from Phil and Mark. Lord, we thank you for our identity is in you. We rest in you, Lord, and as we desire to be more disciplined, seeking you, and that our affections turn towards you, we thank you for the strength. We thank you for your grace that just wraps us. Lord, we love you.